But how I try to help prompt and educate is by shifting that narrative and putting, this interesting spin on mental health and mental wellness, and having people recognize that financial well-being is a self-care practice, and then looking at it from the stories and the narratives and whatever, because then you're starting to unpack some of the reasons why there would be pushback for not wanting to make changes in what they're doing with their financial lives. And then also, by doing that, you're kind of opening them up to recognize that maybe what they're doing isn't going to get them where they want to be.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Chris-Beth Cowie here from Empowered Facts and the host of BizGrams. Each day, I get the privilege of interviewing amazing entrepreneurs and people that are doing great things in the community. Today, I'm super excited because we have a very special guest, Sophia Jackson, creative, author, counselor, financial professional. She does it all, okay? And one of the cool things, getting to know a little bit of Sophia, really have a heart for impact and positivity and transforming the narrative around our community and really inspiring and uplifting them. So Sophia, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, especially after that introduction. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
From my heart to yours. And Sophia, I know one of the things that you're very passionate about is, talking about mental health and financial well-being. And I know with your book, you bring that to life in some ways. So if you want to just talk to us a little bit about what you do specifically and why is it so important?
Okay. I do several things, but I wanted to keep it in the context of mental health, mental wellness, self-care, and how that translates into coloring as well as finance. So I believe that self-care is extremely important. And I know I'm not the only one. It's extremely been highlighted during this time over this last year with the pandemic, mental health, mental well-being, and how are you taking care of yourself? How are you coping with everything that's happening? And my go-tos are financial self-care and also doing that through coloring as well. So and that would be like mental self-care. So how are you, tapping in, being mindful, being intentional, living in the moment and taking some time out for yourself. And so those are two of my self-care practices, but then I also encourage others to, do coloring, try coloring if they haven't, tap back into it if they did when they were a child and haven't, and then also recognize that financial wellness and financial well-being is also a self-care practice. And then, of course, you take care of yourself first, and therefore you're able to take care of others.
Yeah, definitely love that. That analogy of taking care of self first, and then that empowers you to take care of others. First hit me when I was traveling back home from Uganda, and the stewardess said, if the plane goes down, make sure you put on your own oxygen mask first, and then help someone else. And I think in that moment, it put my life in self-check. I was like, okay, I'm spending a lot of time, building community, doing all of these things, which were impactful. But at the same time, my financial health, my well-being was being deteriorated. And so really in that moment, it was like, what can I do for me so that I'm well, I'm whole, so that I could then serve others in an impactful way? And I think you talking about just that financial well-being as it relates to your mental health is so crucial. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm curious, in terms of, you talk a lot about financial well-being. What are some tips or strategies that you talk to people about in terms of getting financially fit?
Having a financial professional. Like there should be somebody, we have a doctor in our life, we have a dentist, we have specialists, practitioners, we have the food place that we always go to or that we're partial to. We have people in our lives and businesses in our lives that come to the table and help navigate. And we, especially in our community, in the melanated community, we don't have financial professionals. We rely on the banks, and they're there and they serve a purpose, but you should have somebody that you can sit down and talk to, almost like having a mental health counselor, which is another area that we need some support in, but then have somebody who also manages from a financial standpoint. And I forgot your question when I went
Hey,
off
no,
on.
tips as it
Oh,
relates to,
tips. Yes.
yeah.
So
And I
to have a
think that
financial
as you said,
professional.
that's like foundational. So
Yeah,
I
foundational.
appreciate that. Yes.
Yeah. And then and the first thing that that financial professional will tell you, as I would, is pay yourself first. And what does that look like? Because, we talk about paying ourselves first, and then it's like, well, what does that mean? That means when you get money in your hand, in your bank account, the first thing you do is you take out 10%, 20%, and you put it aside first before you pay your bills, before you go do groceries, before food, before kids, even, like, because at the end of the day, that will benefit them as well. And you take that aside and then you pretend like it doesn't exist, and then you fork out to whomever you need to fork out to, because at the end of the day, if you're not paying yourself first, nobody else is going to do it. You get your paycheck, or you get whatever. If you're an entrepreneur, you have that money coming in, and if you don't do that for yourself, that everybody will just take, and then you have nothing, and then you're like, okay, I have more month than money.
Yes. Yes.
So those are the highlights. Though those would be the top two: is to have a financial professional that you counsel with on all things, not buying a car, life insurance, home mortgage, whatever. And I have a team of people that I work with and support. It's melanated individuals as well, so they understand and the narrative and some of the challenges that we experience with the trust situation when it comes to money, our relationship with money, the historical context of that, the upbringing, and all of those things. And so having somebody that you can connect with. So those would be the two main ones.
Hey, I value that feedback. And in my own journey, I have been guilty of kind of navigate my finance alone. I think sometimes as you talk about it, it's that historical thing. I think coming from the Caribbean, I heard people, putting their money in the pillow or in the mattress.
In a
And,
mattress. And it's
yes.
nobody's it's nobody's business, and mind your business, and I'm going to take care of things. I don't need to tell nobody
But
nothing, and like all those. No.
yes, yeah. And I think what you're talking about is changing the narrative, the story that we have with money, right? And so,
Absolutely.
maybe we heard money doesn't grow on trees, right? And
Yes.
so, all of these like limiting beliefs around money, and then the
Mm.
way that it shows up in our personal finance, and then furthermore in our businesses as a whole. And to your point, I think, having worked with a financial advisor has helped me to really plan for that life goals, the benchmarks and the milestones that I want to have in my life.
Mhm.
And yes, you could go on Google, you can go and try to figure out this on your own. But one of the things I like to say is that you could close the gap and the time required to learn if you connect with a mentor, an ally that's beside you. And that's where yourself, Sophia, and your team comes in a very powerful way.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Closing the gap and navigating, because there are systems, right? We talk oppression. There's systems in place to stop us from doing some of the things that we need to do and hitting those benchmarks. And if you have somebody who knows how to navigate the system, or at least is an advocate for you, in order to navigate the system, to find out the answers to the questions that you might have, or the misinformation that we all have. I mean, myself included, misinformation and lack of information. And so absolutely having somebody to talk to and who is in your corner financially is imperative, for you, for your for this generation, for your kids, and for your kids' kids. I mean, this is how we he not only changed the narrative but changed the trajectory, and from where we've come from to where we're going, right?
Yeah. And so, Sophia, can you tell us a little bit about what got you started on this entrepreneurial pathway of wanting to transform the narrative for people's financial well-being and their mental health as well?
Hmm. Thank you. Good question. I mean, I've always been entrepreneurial minded without even knowing, because I started off wanting and being, I guess, a singer, songwriter, performer. I did that in the city for a while, so that's entrepreneurial right there. And then with getting into the finance, it was a wake up call for me. Like literally, I was I went to an event, a friend, like a college friend, invited me to, somebody that I knew back from Ottawa, because that's my hometown. Even though I'm Jamaican,
And
Trini
that's
Jamaican.
Trinidadian and Jamaican.
Yes, it is. Yes, my sister coined that phrase, and
Okay.
I grew up in Ottawa. But so a friend of mine invited me to an event that was about finances, and I was like, sure, I'll come. And when I sat down and listened to everything that was shared with me, it blew my mind. And because I'm in my 40s, so 40-year-old woman of color, born here. I didn't come from foreign. I was born here, grew up in this system, and the things that I learned, I was like, well, why don't I already know this? Why isn't this being taught in schools? Well, why don't I know about life insurance and TFSAs and saving and interest rates, what the banks do with our money, how they might, like, why don't I know all these things? And so I was like, I wanted to learn for myself. And then also I was like, I need to share this with other people, because if I'm in this situation, of course there's going to be other people who are going to be in the same situation, and don't have that knowledge and experience.
Hey, that is so powerful. And oftentimes we see, people's entrepreneurial, where they end up calling home. And it's great to hear that you have been entrepreneurial and not even knowing it, but where in terms of the finance coming in and, going to a session and learning. And I can share a couple years ago too, when I first really got into just understanding how to build wealth. I had attended the Millionaire Mindset or Millionaire Mind event in Toronto, and they were talking about paying yourself first, setting aside your freedom financial fund, and all of these things. And then my commitment every year has been to read The Richest Man in Babylon, and just that story and narrative around building wealth and finance also helped me. But then, to your point, when I connected with my financial advisor, it set me on a whole nother trajectory, right? And so it's
Mm-hmm.
really powerful to hear, um, you really seeing a need for yourself, but then wanting to commit and give it back to the community as well, which is super, super, you know, rewarding in many ways, I'm sure.
Yeah, it could be it is rewarding, but it's also frustrating. But I won't go down that path too much. But it's just, it was like a no brainer for me. It's like, it, we have to, in order to make change, in order to ensure that we're not in the same place and stay stagnant, that this information needs to be shared. We need to be able to navigate the system, utilize the laws and rules to our benefit, and do away with some of the stigma and miscommunication and so on and so forth that exists.
Yeah, and that definitely comes with um, getting exposure to the knowledge, right? In terms of what people are learning. As you said, you didn't know about that in school. And for myself, I will tell you a little insight in my own story. I actually failed grade 10 math.
Oh.
And I decided, you know what? who needs math anyways? They're not teaching me anything relevant, but I needed to pass a math class at that age, in that grade. And so I decided to take math for everyday living. And I was like, this math class was the most relevant for living beyond the classroom. I learned about reading receipts. I learned about taxes. And I'm like, why don't they teach this to everyone? Because financial literacy is something that isn't taught to us in schools. And if we miss classes like that, we never get that knowledge, right? And so, you know, government officials, if you're looking, listening, we need to inject financial literacy into the classrooms from a very young age to really inform and transform our population. And parents, if you're looking and listening out there, you need to, one, do this for yourself and teach your kids, you know, so that they too can one day be financially, you know, financially responsible, financially independent, and ultimately looking at building that legacy around their finances.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself. Just want to highlight that a lot of times I get, because I'm a youth worker and I've worked in the Peel School Board, a lot of people have said, why don't you, educate children? And I was like, yeah, children need to be educated, but they go home and then the habits of the household are what dictate things, right?
Yeah.
So, we really do need to focus on our adults and yeah, and parents, and then also baby boomers, Zoomers, like we called them. We actually had an event um, earlier this week, I believe it was yesterday, and it was dedicated on the baby boomer age bracket, and because that's the biggest transfer of wealth that's going to happen.
Mhm.
In our lifetime is all these individuals, going into retirement, going in and even transitioning, and what's happening with their assets, whatever they've accumulated, if they don't have life insurance, if they don't have a will and things
Will.
like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's about focusing on our adults and elders because they're going to have the responsibility to transfer that on to our younger people.
Hey, that's so powerful. And one thing that you said too, in terms of, you know, when you are passionate about something and you want to go to that mountaintop and you're like, listen, you need to be aware. And people are like, oh, but I'm going to keep doing the same thing that I was doing before, what has been done before, and not really wanting to change their behaviors and attitudes towards their finance, towards, you know, setting out that legacy plan for themselves and their family. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth or trying to herd cats, you know, on your entrepreneurial journey, when you know that you have something of value to share with people and there's a bit of resistance. I'm just curious, how have you help people to be awakened to the solutions and the offerings that you've had when there seemed to be some resistance?
Yeah. The resistance is futile. You can't, like, people have to come to the realization. What I've learned, and sometimes it was a painful lesson to learn, is that, they have to come to that realization on your own. But how I try to help prompt and educate is by shifting that narrative and putting, this interesting spin on mental health and mental wellness, and having people recognize that financial well-being is a self-care practice, and then looking at it from the stories and the narratives and whatever, because then you're starting to unpack some of the reasons why there would be pushback for not wanting to make changes in what they're doing with their financial lives. And then also so by doing that, you're kind of opening them up to recognize that maybe what they're doing isn't going to get them where they want to be. And
Mhm.
where do you want to be? So what's the why? What are the benchmarks you want to achieve? Are they just pipe dreams, or do you actually want to achieve them? And then that's where you can go from there. So it's utilizing, the coloring book, the narrative of mindfulness and mental wellness and mental health and self-care practices, finance is a self-care, coloring is a self-care. How can we put them together? Doing events and then introducing people and connecting them to a financial professional that can help them on that journey once I've opened them up to the possibilities. So that's how I do it. Some people are damn stubborn.
Hey, but one of the things I love what you say, you're just holding that presence and your essence and really sharing the value that that you have to offer, the awareness that people need to have. And instead of like forcing them or clamming them and all of these
Yeah.
things,
Believe
you're
me, I tried that. I tried that, and I realized that it doesn't work, and it actually repels people, right?
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like, how can I take a softer approach, and then also recognize that, and I'm very passionate about this. What I'm about to say right now is that, the financial industry is a lucrative industry. It's one of the only industries that are surviving during this whole pandemic, right? If you are working in the financial industry and have, a business, you're pretty much pandemic proof, right? So, but we need to put the mission before the commission. It's one of the things that we say. It's like, what is in the best interest for your client or for you first, and then, yeah, you can make money, but then also you can make money doing, opening yourself up to a new career or a side hustle or whatever in the financial industry. There's so many different ways to monetize that,
Hey,
and then that taps into that whole entrepreneurial spirit, right?
yeah, that's really powerful. And so talk to us a little bit about your book. I know you have a copy there. Can you show
Yes.
it to us and tell us about why you created it? And, I know it's a coloring book, adult coloring book, why you created it, and what are some of the insights that you have experienced, coloring the book yourself.
Yes. Um, I was inspired to create this book. This is it here, Soulful Color. I have some of the tabs because there's some of the images I want to show you. This is my copy, so it's colored. Yours would come uncolored. What inspired me initially is I went back to school as a mature student to become a youth worker. Actually, got my credentials as a child and youth counselor, and I put a lot of pressure on myself to get honors. I'm like, if I'm going to be going to college for the second time, I better, knock it out of the park. And I put a lot of pressure on myself. I did achieve honors, right? But I stressed myself out to almost insanity. So I used coloring as a way to, be mindful, to de-stress anxiety, to combat those things. But I couldn't find coloring pages that resonated with me as a person of a woman of color. So I was coloring children's coloring books, and then because the simplicity, like the more intricate things like mandalas and stuff like that, just was counterproductive. It actually made me stressed. I was like, how am I going to finish this and study for my exams? So I went to children's coloring books, and then again, like I was saying, the representation wasn't there in the industry, and the adult coloring world is like a multi-million, if not billion-dollar industry. And so I was like, I need to create something. And then once I went on that journey to create the book, um, it started opening up, like, again, diversity, equity, inclusion, hair, for hair. and
Yes.
and then, of course, because of the childlike, it's because it's childlike, even though it's an adult coloring book. And what makes it adult is just that, I guess, the affirmations, I guess. But because it's so childlike, it does resonate with younger people. And so, with the whole marketing, anybody who's a marketing guru would tell me that, you have to have a target market, but really it's really from young adults or, young people, grade 4 or 5 to seniors. And but my target demographic I get would be somebody who looks like me and my age group. So in that area as well. So that's what inspired it. That's why I put it out. It's turned into, it's morphed and grown into something that I wasn't even expecting or anticipating, because it's been used by counselors and principals and teachers, and, to spark those conversations about, like I was saying, diversity, inclusion, equity, and tackling some of the, just to start a conversation starter, right? A fun way to deal with some challenging topics. and
Yes.
and then also finance. Like I was like, how can I can tie finance into anything. It's like, so definitely I could do it with the book and entrepreneurship and stuff like that. So
That's really powerful. You want to show us some pages?
oh yes, yes, I'm going to show you the last page. It's
Okay.
one of my favorites. Is my, I called it the finale piece.
Finale. I
And
love
like I said, these are colored.
that's
So that
amazing.
says, when you overcome, you become.
When you overcome, you
And
become. I love it.
mhm. And that was that. This image was really. I just wanted to show. There's just so much there, you know.
It's beautiful. Beautiful.
Uh, And then the other one I'd like to show you.
I was just saying to Sophia as well, we're definitely going to get a couple of the books and add it to our library here at E4X. Um,
Mhm.
let's see that one.
Embrace life. It's amazing.
That's awesome. And I
Yeah.
mean, your coloring is very artistic. I don't know if my coloring is that great, but I will try. And once I get the book, I will definitely do a shout out to Sophia and the Soulful Color book, and I will definitely show you my coloring.
Yes. I want to show you this one before I comment on that. So create your legacy one leap of faith at a time. So that kind of just kind of encapsulates everything that we're talking about. And then I wanted to show that I have some male images as well. I try not to show my coloring book because I'm so meticulous about, how I color. And that's the calming piece for me, that I could be meticulous, but it's not a really detailed image. So I can do that because you don't need to color. You don't even need to color in the lines. It's you do what you want with your coloring book. And so yeah, don't use me as an example. You got to
Hey,
just
no,
make it your own.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I love the affirmations as well. Mental health is, very prevalent and have caused a lot of people a lot of hardship and, difficulties in terms of navigating and coming out of that dark space into a space of light. And I could definitely see where a tool like your coloring book could help someone. What are you saying to yourself? What are you thinking? What are you internalizing? And then to your point, it's not about, Sophia, your coloring is better than my coloring. It's not
Yeah.
about that. It's
Not at
your
all.
own. Express yourself. You have a canvas to
Hmm.
express yourself. So that is very powerful, Sophia. Thank you so much for that.
No worries.
Yeah. And so, Sophia, in terms of people that are on their entrepreneurial journey, I'm just curious, what is something that you want to share with them? Want to inspire them, give them some encouragement, challenge a thought that they may be having? What is something that you'd like to share?
I want to reiterate, because it's so important. Self care, and what are your self care practices? What new self care practices can you adopt? Can coloring and finance be one of them? Can you shift your narrative and include finance as a self care practice and recognize that it is that? And then take the action, 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 action. Like we talk about doing, we talk about wanting different, wanting better, and then we don't put the action behind it. So, You have to take that step and not to be afraid. Don't let fear stop you. Don't let, you know, past experiences or bad experiences, don't let that stop you. And just, move forward, take that step. Those are the tips and advice that I would. And then if you're unsure of how to start or where to start, that I am here and I have a team of people who can assist and help and let you know where to start.
Hey, that's so powerful. And there was so much there. I love it all. Over the past couple of days, we've been hearing this thing about self-care, being mindful, checking your mental health and well-being, your thoughts. And today for you to come back and end our week on that same note, I think it's only divine. Uh, but what I will say is that here, one of the things that I developed over the years is called the My Value Formula. Yesterday, I spoke about it briefly, but it's really looking at your spiritual, your mental, physical, emotional, and phonetical well-being. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. And then looking at your relational pieces, so the relationships in your life, looking at the professional aspects, looking at the things that you're responsible for managing, so protecting your assets and all of those pieces, and then giving back to community, so that charitable aspect. So 9 core areas around the My Value Formula I talk to folks about in terms of being mindful of their wellness and well-being. And today, I think we talked about our mental piece a little, mental
Yeah.
health, your mental well-being. We also talked
Mhm.
what would be in the managerial pieces, that finance, your assets, the things that you're, the financial components. And we also talked about a phonetical piece as well, so coloring and expression. And so typically my final question for our viewers or our guests today is really looking at what is something phonetical you do to express love. And Sophia, I feel like I know what your thing is, coloring, but tell us what it is for you, and you can augment your coloring story as well.
Mm. Um, Coloring is definitely a thing for me, but it's like, we from in our Caribbean world, a lot of times when you're cooking and you're making the food, you don't eat it. You're making it for other people, and it's like you don't have the same appetite for what you create. So I actually color less now that I've created the coloring book, and I have to be very intentional about picking up my pencils and going at it. But I also sing. That's something that was my first passion, my first love, and songwriting. So I've been getting back into doing that and dabbling in that, and then I have this saying. I mean, I guess I didn't coin the saying, but that that movie Slumdog Millionaire. So is creating Slumdog Millionaire moments. So like, what's your Slumdog Millionaire moment? Like, how are you pulling all of the pieces and your experiences from your life, and how are they coming together for you in a life-changing way, in a way that's serendipitous almost, and that can either validate what you've done so far, all your, even if it's trauma, as well as the highlight reels of your life, that you can be validated by that, or that all these things come together, and in a moment of decision, that it just, all the pieces come together and it propels you into the next step of your journey. So is living those, I feel like I've come to an age and stage in life where all of my experiences just starting to kick in and benefit me in ways that I wouldn't have even thought of. And I think for sure we all have that ability and those skills, and we just need to be aware of them, take stock, take inventory, and then, utilize them.
Hey, that is so powerful, so powerful. One of the things you talked about is using everything that you've got, the good, the bad, the highs, the lows, all of it, to create your slumdog moment, a
Mm.
millionaire moment. I love it. I will probably use that again. Inspired by Sophia. Thank you so much. Sophia, tell people how they can get in touch with you to get your book, to learn about your financial services that you offer, and to, build relationship and connect with you.
Okay, the first place to start would be my Instagram. So I have Soulful Color at Soulful Color, as well as at Soj Soul. So that's SOJAYSOUL on Instagram, and then there is soulfulcolor.com, so you can order the coloring book there, and uh and then yeah, those two like to start those two places. I actually also my email address with it, which is Sophia Jackson, Soj, so SOPHIAJACKSONSOJAY at gmail.com.
Awesome. And we'll definitely make sure to put that in the description so that you can definitely connect with Sophia and her team after this as well. Sophia, it has been a privilege and pleasure having you here today with us. I felt like I learned something. I'm excited to get my own coloring book. So you'll be seeing me reaching out shortly for that. And we definitely want to keep telling your story to those that are around. So thank you from our team to your team. We're sending you lots of love and positivity for this day and beyond. And so thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. And I appreciate being invited to share with you. It was a pleasure for me as well. And thank you for letting me know that you learned something that hits here, because that's one of the things that I really appreciate and love doing is having like a light bulb go off in somebody's head so that can help benefit them. So
Yeah.
that's
And even just to know that, I'm on the right path. And, sometimes getting, I think I put off a meeting with my financial advisor. And so I was like, it put me, check yourself before you wreck yourself. So I'm going to reach out to that person today and say, can we schedule a meeting to just make sure that the overall health and well-being and momentum, I like what you said. We have our doctors, we do our check-ins. And so don't delay with your financial well-being, even and your mental well-being as well. If you need help, you could definitely reach out to different community organizations for support
mhm.
there as well. So Sophia, thank you so much. Viewers, thank you so much. We'll be seeing you next week, Monday at 11:30 with another amazing guest. And we look forward to connecting then. Take care. Bye.
Bye.